Have you ever sat there in your keto lifestyle and looked at your grand plate of meat and think, I have no dessert? Well, we're about ready to sweeten up your day. Hit the music and let's get started. Joining me today is the Willy Wonka of the keto confectionery world. It is James Baum, and much like Frank Baum, who brought to you a fantastical world of creatures and events, James, my man, brings delicious desserts to the keto world. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. Yourself?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for joining me. So, James is another friend of mine who I've met through going to Eric the Trainer's gym. James, when I met him, came in with this box of unbelievable, delicious baked goods that are not the kind of thing you would expect to get on keto, certainly not 4 years ago. What I want to ask you, James, is, well, I do keto. I've fallen off. I'm getting back on. But when I started doing keto, it was meats and it was cheeses. It was whole foods. There was no snack or dessert that you can really have.
Right.
You were an early adopter of keto before it really was keto, before it was
Yes.
branded, before you could go to the store and just, get Quest chips. How
hmm
did you, what's your story? How did you get to this point?
So obviously, as a kid, we didn't have any of that option, right? And I didn't know sugar was bad. Trick or treating was awesome, and candy was great. But as you get older, you kind of were like, okay, maybe sugar bad for your teeth, and that's as far as I knew. But what happened was, I graduated high school in 2002, and then 2003, my one of my best friends, he has epilepsy. He passed away from an epileptic seizure. And at that time, I didn't know that reducing your carbohydrates, specifically sugar, but carbohydrates as a whole, would reduce the seizures you would get. And obviously, you're 19, so it doesn't really dawn on you. And
The idea of death doesn't dawn on you at 19, like you're going to live forever.
yeah, I mean, it threw me off. But then when I was like, okay, maybe there's a correlate. If sugar is bad for your teeth, and I was starting to think, maybe it's bad for other things too. And so at that time, Google was kind of fairly new, and then searching the web was new. But podcasts and audio casts weren't. So then I started listening to doctors that were doing low carbohydrate, just for teeth stuff. And one of the audios, they were talking about epilepsy, and it was like, whoa, what is this? And so I started doing more research, and I found out that for epilepsy, that if you can reduce your carbohydrates, it would really be beneficial. And I'm like, well, let me try it just for myself to see what it's like not having carbohydrates. I didn't know there was a thing as non-essential carbohydrates, meaning that we don't need carbs. I didn't know that. I was like, oh, we have to have it. Like, you need energy, but I didn't know you can use fats as energy.
There is a lot of research that shows that epileptic seizures, things like autism, are
hmm
exacerbated by a heavy use of carbohydrates and a large presence of glucose in the body.
Yes, and I didn't know that at the time, me being autistic myself. But as I started doing research, I was like, "Oh wow, there's more to this," and maybe it's the media and these boxed food companies that are really pushing things. And of course, we like our cereals. And but as I started realizing, thousands of years ago, we didn't have this kind of medical issues that we have now. And what were they eating? Whole foods, like you were saying.
We also didn't have access to the kinds of foods we had. It was not the the plentiful basket of dietary goods that are readily available to us is a product of the Industrial Revolution. It's modern
Yes.
times. Prior to that, we did not have things like readily available white breads or sugars or anything. That's all modern. Or even like mass produced fruit.
I mean, thousands of years ago, I look at it as it's seasonal. You only had so much fruit, so your fruit carbs were spread over. You had 10 bananas over a season, versus now you can go to the supermarket and buy 10 bananas in a day. it's slightly different, the convenience factor. Yeah, I think it's easier now to get more carbs nowadays compared to, maybe when our grandparents or, way back in the day when you had to grow your own agriculture. Agriculture, was seasonal. So it's not like you had, I mean, you only had so much grains, so much, vegetables, so much fruits. Whereas meats, I think, were year round.
And I want to ask you another question because you did mention, because we were talking about the whole idea of the epilepsy and
Hmm.
autism. I am not somebody who was or is autistic
Okay.
or on the spectrum of any kind, but I've
Hmm.
always been curious. One, if you're comfortable talking about it,
Of course, of course.
autism comes in many different
So I'm
shapes
on the
and
spectrum.
sizes, right? Um, did when you switched from having a standard American diet to one that was restricted in carbohydrates, would you say that you felt any neurological differences?
I was able to focus better, that's for sure. Because I know as a kid, I had tutors my whole life, and I didn't know that learning required, your healthy fats and things that form the brain. It just didn't occur to me. So when I switched over to eating, fish, red meats, and even including, omega-3 and your oils, the fatty acid oils that I put in my drinks, I noticed that I'm able to focus more. I'm much more productive. I feel like I'm socially much more. I'm not an introvert as much, and that seems to help because I would never go out to clubs, even in college. I would never go do those things. I would just stay in the house and. But as I got to like 19, 20, 21, and yeah, and I increased my fats, I think it really made me much more smart. Like I'm able to do things that a lot of people can't do. Even with like nutrition, it's like, oh, I know this combination and this combination and this is, and but then and I dig further, actually it's not this kind. So things that like my fiance goes, that's way out of my scope, and I don't know how you do it, but yeah, so I think the fats really play an important role. They're essential for a reason, right? Essential fatty acids, or that's why they're called essential fatty acids. But yeah, it helps. I feel like it's a world of a difference for me compared to like, I go to these autistic society groups, and I can tell the kids or even people my age that are carbohydrate dependent because they're eating like a sandwich or something. So you already know they're a carb person, and they don't necessarily have to be fat. Like I'm not fat, but for me, I can tell if I have carbs, I get really foggy.
It's hard to describe to somebody who has never done keto or sees it as this
Hmm.
weird thing or sort of like, how do you do that? How do you have energy? So when I start on keto, especially coming off the carb thing, you have this like 2 day window where just things are just strange because your body doesn't, it isn't burning fat. It doesn't remember how to burn fat yet.
Hmm.
Once all of the glucose is out of your system, your body starts producing the ketones. Now your body needs about a week for it to start going like, okay, this is how I can power myself.
Hmm.
And then there's like a clarity and a sharpness and a general feeling
Yeah.
of well being that occurs that's hard to describe to somebody who's never experienced it, especially
Hmm.
since most people go from having this incredible sugar rich diet that basically is mainlining fat from the liver all over the
Right.
body, wherever it can stuff the fat,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
to now the body's functioning in a more energy efficient way and just the
Yes.
feeling of well-being. You don't feel like your brain is being drugged through the mud. It's hard to describe unless you've actually had that experience.
Correct. It's because we're so, unless you grew up with your parents eating, off the land, and even then, that's not as common anymore. Even me, I grew up eating carbs. So yeah, unless you were born like that, like when I have kids, I plan to have them living that lifestyle, from the get-go, so that their taste and their bud and all the palates are going to be much more organic, I feel like, and not tampered with cereals and Pop Tarts. And I mean, it sounds nice, but you know, do we really need it? Probably not. So it's a world of a difference. Yeah, if you haven't done it at a low carb or a ketogenic lifestyle or even a carnivore, yeah, it's hard to explain it. You have to go through it to kind of understand what you and me have done.
Now, going back to what you have done, so it was 2003.
Yep.
You started eating. You started eating ketogenic, though I can't remember in
Yep.
2003 whether, like, I don't think it was really branded as keto. The big low carb branding, if I'm remembering correctly, around this time was more or less Atkins, but Atkins was more of a package sold fad diet type thing. There was a lot
To
of
a
good
certain
science
extent,
behind
but
it.
in the first 2 weeks of it, they do actually tell you to increase your fats to get Atkins adapted. So, but they don't necessarily use the word keto at all. They just say, increase your fats for the first couple of weeks and get acclimated to the Atkins diet, is what I've read. But yeah, nowhere during the Atkins phase did they mention that you're going to be in ketosis or anything like that, or any
Yeah.
words. No keto words at all. It was just Atkins here, Atkins there. So yeah,
After the initial 2 weeks, then they have you slowly raise up your carbohydrate level to find your parity level where you
correct.
stop losing weight. So that was kind of the emphasis. But with the keto, it's very much you start cutting out all the carbs, and you establish. And the important thing is to effectively track it so you know what's happening. I
Right.
myself do it through blood tests. That way,
Sure.
I know very specifically. For anyone out there is starting keto and you're using the P strips, that doesn't really tell you anything aside from the fact that yes, you're producing ketones, but it doesn't tell you whether you're utilizing them. And
Right.
after a while, you're trying to get that strip purple, and you can do that maybe in your first week or two, but after that, your body begins utilizing the ketones and the strips never purple again. It's
Yeah.
basically, aside from knowing that you're making ketones, it doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah, it's not as
So
accurate. I mean, it's good for a little bit until it's not.
yeah, it's a good starter, but then if you really want to keep on track of it, and if you're doing keto, you probably should, you need the blood test.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more accurate. Like my fiance has a keto blood finger machine, Keto Mojo, and that's phenomenal.
I
She
got
tests
one.
herself yeah, so she'll test her glucose and then she'll test her ketones. It's her through her insurance, she's going to get a continuous glucose monitor. I'm so jealous. I'm like, man, I want one because she's a data person, so she wants to always see her glucose. You know, that way if she's getting whatever sugar dip or whatever she feels like, because even though she does keto, for her sometimes she may be, because she's a drug rep during the day, so if she has excess food from whatever place, they may have extra carbs and she may go above 20, just a little bit. Even for her, like just 2 or 3 grams above will totally mess her up. She's that sensitive. So yeah, that's kind of cool to track your numbers, like you said, and track your blood. That's going to be the most accurate way. Then you can be for sure accountable for yourself.
How strict are you?
I'm more strict than her because I don't work at a drug company where they're giving out free food, so I can control myself. But if I was at that party or if they had food there, I probably would have a little bit. But a lot of times I'm pretty strict for the most because I compete in bodybuilding. So, and also I'm trying to live indefinitely. And as we all know, reducing carbs is more than just, weight loss, but also for anti-aging, inflammation and autophagy, which is a whole nother podcast we can get into. Uh, for that. But yeah, so wrinkles, right? Wrinkle. That's the kind of the main reason why I was like, man, if I can reduce my wrinkles, that's not that I have them yet, but that's the one thing people forget. If you can start reducing your carbohydrates, you'll look so much younger. That's the one thing. So me and one of my best friends, we both are exercise enthusiasts. He's a PE coach and he works out, but he just looks older than me because he does higher carbohydrates than me. Even though we both work out and we both do the exact same thing, we're fit, we try to eat healthy foods, but his definition of healthy foods is low fat, high carbs, and he does it with vegetables, but it's still carbohydrates, right? So, but yeah, he just has gray hairs, and he looks 10 years older than me. But I try to stay as strict as I can because I compete. So, um, it's a lifestyle, and who doesn't love meat?
Well, yeah. Well, vegetarians as a case in point, but otherwise, but I know what you're saying.
Fair enough.
So what does your diet look like in a given day? What do you, take us through a day? So also, you are very fit. You do
Yes.
have like nice muscles, and also these are muscles that naturally, I believe, your body wouldn't have necessarily wanted, that you had to sort of convince your body to take on because you were a small kid.
Yeah, so I didn't realize. So here's another thing you may not know, but I don't produce hormones. I don't produce testosterone, and that's one thing that eating a higher fat lifestyle does is it will optimize your hormone level. So I was producing like 100, and so if the range is 300 to 800 or whatever, it bumped my levels. Not necessarily really high, but it got my levels up to like 300. So I bumped up a couple hundred just from increasing my fats. I think it may have to do with the carnitine in the red meats. I'm not quite sure, but I know just increasing my fats definitely optimize my hormones better. So,
So prior to keto,
mhm,
you effectively didn't have much in the way of testosterone.
right,
Doing keto raised you
correct.
into like the lower end of the normal range, but
Yes.
at least got you into the ballpark.
Yeah, they're like, "What'd you do?" I'm like, "Well, I just increased my fats. I cut out my carbohydrate, and I think it's all the soy. A lot of our diet, in American diet nowadays has soy and
Or
phytoestrogen,
corn.
corn too. But I feel like it has a lot of phytoestrogen in there, which I can't for sure say, but I think it definitely hinders your testosterone level. Because I know when people do red meat, they definitely look bigger. Whereas, for whatever reason, even vegan bodybuilders compared to like meat bodybuilders, you can definitely tell for whatever reason something about red meat and something about animal protein. So yeah, I do a lot of red meats. I do a lot of wagyu, but that's because I am Japanese and it just melts in your mouth. So that's a really, and it's not like gritty fat, right, on the outside. It's fat that it's high in oleic acid.
It's well marbled.
Yes, and so I'll do a lot of that. And I do a lot of even when I do fast food, because remember I have a full-time business, so I'm driving around all the time. I'll do a Five Guys burger without the bun. I'll do a bacon cheeseburger without the bun. I'll just do extra cheese and extra bacon.
Gonna say worst comes to worst, you can drive through Carl's and get their lettuce wrapped. And strangely enough, Carl's is one of the few places that know how to wrap their lettuce wrap so that it's like a pocket that the burger sits in, so you can eat it with your hand.
Yeah, so I just do lettuce wrap, or I'll do it in a bowl and just get a fork and knife. And then a lot of jerky. I do a lot of not necessarily jerky, but biltong, because biltong, and that's the one thing that you got to be careful with jerky. They'll add a lot of sugar, and so you end up having like 5, 6 grams of sugar, whether it comes from brown sugar or molasses, or they'll disguise it with whatever else, fructose, and the other ingredients. But biltong is pretty much just salt, pepper, and beef. So I do a lot of biltong snacks, and that like one bag of biltong gets you like 30 grams of protein, And then I do a lot of avocados and eggs for fats and fish. So I do like a lot of sashimi. So my local grocery store in the back gets fresh sashimi. So I'll do like tuna and salmon. I'll mix it up between spicy and non-spicy, and so that's kind of most of my day. And then I'll mix that
Interesting.
up. Yeah, and cheeses. Anytime I can get a chance, I'll do cheese. So that keeps me
Mm.
satiated. The fats and the cheese are really good.
Oh, there's nothing better than cheese. And it's sad. It's sad that I am somewhat allergic to it, but still
Yeah, I know, right?
can't.
You're telling me.
Yeah, that was the entire fall of this year was having the massive allergies, and it turns out it's at least partially related to dairy, though I think there's also other elements involved. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
Of course, of course, of course.
So you've effectively, over the course of your early 20s and whatnot, very focused on living the low carb lifestyle, the
Hmm.
ketogenic lifestyle,
Yep.
and which is you're very adamant about not calling it a diet. It's not a diet. Everything's a
Right.
diet. Nothing's a diet. For you, it's not a diet. This is your eating methodology.
Right. It's a way of living is how I look at it.
What led you to desserts? What led you? What led you to go like, okay, I know that this is the way I eat, but I still miss something. I still want something. I assume that's what you did. Is that what you did?
I mean, I came to that conclusion, but for many years, I just figured, okay, if I'm going to eat healthy, I don't need that kind of stuff. But then I would see people eat desserts, and I'm like, well, I kind of miss it, but I kind of don't. And what really hit me was when my fiance's best friend died from cancer, and we were in the hospital, and all her family member overweight, of course, was eating like cakes and whatever, and while they're waiting, and we're giving her Jello, and I'm like, really, like Jello as a dessert? Like that's kind of horrible. So then we started like looking around grocery stores to see if there was anything that was low carbohydrate, but I didn't see anything as far as like desserts go. There was low carb and low fat, but we didn't want that, right? We needed some kind of fat, and we just couldn't find it. So then we started messing around, and by that point, then it was too late. So her friend passed away, and nothing we can do. But we're like, okay, no one's still making desserts. Let's just kind of goof around. And then we were like, let's just test it out at the house. And we were giving them to friends and family. And they're like, this is really good. You need to start selling it. So we kind of started on Facebook. And that's kind of how I started with the desserts was like, again, for myself, it didn't occur to me because I'm fairly strict. But then I was like, what about these other people that want desserts but can't have it? Therefore, they may not necessarily do a low carb lifestyle because and so that's when we're like the aha moment.
What was your first dessert?
We started with the lemon poppy seed muffin, which was really popular, but because a lot of ingredients are really hard to get in the keto fashion, so finding like freeze dried lemons, a lot of times they'll still add dextrose, so they'll still add a form of carbohydrate, which in the strict ketogenic lifestyle, we don't like to touch. So it's really hard to do. But then we started with muffins. Uh, Predominantly, and then we quickly moved into cheesecakes. So we wanted to be able to mix it up, right? Having the same thing over and over kind of gets boring. It doesn't matter if it's a muffin that's chocolate or coffee or lemon or whatever. If the texture is the same, eventually you're going to kind of get bored, right? It's like just eating chips all
Yeah.
day. And so then we're like, okay, let's do cheesecakes. And then we're like, okay, that's a different texture. And that took a little bit, that was a lot harder because of the process doing the crust, keeping that low carb with uh, almond flour and just a lot of little things, walnuts, things that were low carb but yet structural. Again, so when you're doing a ketogenic bakery, the structure, that's the other thing, right? Is not only coming up with new textured products, but can it structurally hold up? Because you don't have the yeast and the carbs to have that structure. That's the other problem with fats. They
Yeah,
melt a lot quicker.
there's no glucose, like, because a lot of the structure of baked goods is how the gluten of the wheat,
Yep.
it like structures itself, and
Yeah, gluten is in like glue, kind of is how I look at it.
it's hard to get keto products to get that nice airy
Right.
feel, because how baked goods get it is yeast produces gas that gets trapped in the webbing of the gluten, and that produces that kind of spongy, airy texture.
Sure, sure.
Almond flour doesn't get you the same sort of.
Not nearly as much. So yeah, so then we started playing with cheesecakes, and now we do cookies as well. So I don't know if you've tried our cookies. Maybe you have. If not, we'll have to set up some time to do that. So cookies are another one that we did because again, we wanted to mix it up. That way you can trust rather than go to 10 different companies and try to figure out, okay, maybe this is good. Then you got, you know what I mean? And I'd rather know that one company has a wide variety, like a regular bakery. And
Right.
that's what we wanted. That's what we were trying to look for is what would you see in a regular bakery? Even like the scones from, the raspberry scone bars at Starbucks. We do that seasonally because that's one of our top sellers during the holiday is our raspberry scone bars because people miss that. So we look at things that people like normally, like at a Starbucks or at a bakery, and we try to mimic those things because the idea is we want you to be able to not tell the difference, right? If it's a coffee cake, it should still taste like a coffee cake. Chocolate should still taste like chocolate. So, we wanted to be not necessarily like a bakery that has these exact exuberant wedding cakes with all sorts of decoration, but more functional at the same time as getting, you want your coffee and you want your coffee cake and not feel guilty. So that was kind of our goal. And so we do a wide variety of desserts, but that was kind of the start was with the muffins to the cheesecake. So then now we're learning all the seasonal things that we can do. And again, it takes 10 times, 20 times, like our cinnamon rolls, which are really, it's probably our most popular.
They are really good, I will absolutely say.
That took us probably almost 2 years to to make. that was a tough one.
When you came to the gym, you came with a box, and in the box it was 6 items. There were 2 of each. It was 2 chocolate muffins, 2 coffee cakes, and 2 cinnamon rolls.
Yep.
And you were very adamant, like you definitely want to heat up the cinnamon roll.
Yes.
That you want to get the best experience. And those didn't survive the morning for me. They just didn't.
Yeah, one of our guys, he said it went from a 10 out of 10 to a 15 out of 10 because and this is why I start telling people to heat it up is I forgot, because again, I grew up not having desserts for the longest time, so I forgot what a cinnamon roll tastes like. For me, coffee cake cold, it's fine, it's great. If it's warm, it's great either way. But cinnamon roll, the moment you heat it up, even if, put it in the microwave for like 10 seconds, just enough. It kind of, I don't know, it just,
Activates the cinnamon. It gets the
yeah.
aromatics going. So it
Exactly,
really does.
all the aroma, but it's a different experience. I mean,
That's why when you go to the mall, there's
mhm,
always a Cinnabon, and it's always warm because that smell just permeates.
yes,
And that's also why real estate agents have cinnamon cookies or cinnamon just to
yes,
it's
that's
that
you're
smell just really
absolutely correct.
speaks directly into the soul. So
So that one took almost 2 years to make. So what you had was 2 years in the making, because again, what you're used to, what we're used to with cinnamon rolls is this fluffy, big, oversized, ready, product, and here we are, trying to mimic something similar. And again, with almond flour, it's not the same, but after 2 years, we've got some, including yourself, we've had some of the top keto experts that review products say that this was a phenomenal product. So I'm very proud of that product.
right now in society, you can get keto snacks just about everywhere. Now, the quality and validity of them leads, eh, can vary wildly from product to product. There's lots of
Hmm.
products that are quote unquote sugar free, keto friendly, but they're very high in maltitol, which gives
Yes,
you, if one carbohydrate gets you 4 calories worth of sugar, your maltitol gets you 50% of that. So while yes,
right,
it's not having table sugar, it also is not low carb. If it's
correct,
got if it's got 20 grams of maltitol, you are getting 10 grams of sugar, the equivalent of 10 grams of sugar.
right.
So you have to be careful what's in your products. Your
Yes,
stuff was your stuff is high end. It's just that simple. Your stuff is more of
bougie.
very bougie. There's very few things in the world more bougie than you, James. Of course
But I
not.
mean, we take pride. I mean, especially for me, because I'm always looking, and that's part of my autism is I'm always looking for the highest quality ingredient. Something, some of our competitors may or may not do, and I can tell based on looking at the label and cost, the margins. Sometimes companies are doing it strictly because of the keto word, and
Hmm.
half the people there, like I go to the trade shows, and half the people that sell keto products aren't even doing it. They're just selling it because that's what the company tells them to sell. For me, it's a passion, it's a lifestyle. My friend passed away, my fiance's best friend passed away. We're on a mission to really help people. So, maybe our margins aren't the best compared to some of the other competitors, but, that's what makes our product that much higher in quality. And I stand behind it 100% because of that. Um, it's just, and I'm proud to say that, and a lot of companies may or may not think that their product is bad, but to me, I have a very strict standard. And so, because I want everyone to have it. That's the problem is that a lot of products, especially like with maltol, great example, is not everyone likes the taste of it because it doesn't mimic the taste of sugar. And if you're trying to switch someone from a sugar-based lifestyle to a sugar-free based lifestyle, you want the sweetener that's going to mostly resemble sugar, right? Because those are the people you're after. Keto people, whether they know about our desserts or not, most likely will do keto because they're strict. But then there's people that won't switch over because like that thing that's kind of chemically tasty and it tastes artificial. So I'm not going to do keto if I have to have these desserts. And that's not the company I wanted people to refer us to. Like I have people that don't even do keto. It's funny. One of our coffee shops, great example. They're diabetic, so they're like, this is my one cheat dessert I have. because it has sugar, and I'll just take my insulin or glucophage, and I'll be fine. And I happen to be walking in, dropping off product one day, and the owner's like, keto, keto, coming in. It's like, oh yes. He's like, wait, this is a keto product? I had no idea. I thought this was my car. He couldn't tell the difference. And
That's
that's
awesome.
our that and so now he's telling all his friends, but those are the people we really want, is people that don't necessarily do keto because they're on the fence, that they don't have these desserts that normal people have.
Well, even if you're not doing keto,
That would be great because it's just great. Like, so for me, you would say, why do I need to do keto when I'm not overweight, right? That's the big craze. But for autism, for not, if you're tired all the time and you're taking these naps because you're getting the sugar crash, you may not necessarily be overweight, but you're just really tired all the time. For the brain, if you Alzheimer's, they're finding now that carbohydrate reduction is phenomenal for Alzheimer's reduction.
they're
So
calling they're calling Alzheimer's
type
diabetes
3.
type 3.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They believe that
So
it's actually caused by or certainly highly affected by
correct.
the standard American diet and the strong amounts of sugars, and that might be one of the at very least extenuating
Mhm.
factors, if not the direct cause.
So people like that, bodybuilders can do it. A lot of bodybuilders now are actually switching over to carb reduction because they're starting to become, I'm learning this now, is they're consuming so many carbs that they're becoming type 2 diabetic because their pancreas can't. They're carbon up, they're carbon down, they're carbon up, they're carbon down as they compete, and eventually their body's like too much, too much, and so they may not have necessarily.
Yeah, it takes a lot of calories to build that kind of mass. And if you look at a weight
Mm-hmm.
gainer, most weight gainers aren't protein drinks. There's protein in them.
Yep.
You get the jar and it says 2,000 calories on it.
Oh yeah.
Well, what is that? It's all sugar. Your body can take 4 hours roughly worth of glucose. If you take in 2,000 calories worth of sugar in one sitting, that's all going to fat, no matter what
Yep.
else you're eating that day, no matter what your
Yep.
metabolism is.
Yep.
You just can't do that.
You're absolutely right. So, even yeah. So nowadays, bodybuilders are reducing arthritis, right? So, if you have arthritis, so people that have
Inflammation.
arthritis, yes. So I mean, pretty much the list goes on and on and on and on for people that should reduce their carbohydrates. Again, remember, there's essential amino acids because obviously you need it for muscle. Essential fatty acids, we talked about brain development, joints, ligaments, you need it, lubrication. But is there really essential carbohydrates? There isn't. When you think your body makes carbs from excess protein or from excess fat. If we can even just reduce our carbs even by 50%, one of our latest products, now that we've transitioned with our new logo, this is our old logo, but with our new logo to KDC, we are now coming out with, we just started making bagels for the savory side. So that's something I would love for you to try, especially because bagels and lox.
Look, I am a Jew.
So am I.
So, certainly culturally,
Bagels and lox.
yes.
Bagels and lox.
So,
And cream
so
cheese.
that's
And capers.
not capers for me. They taste like soap. I'm one of those people.
I don't like capers, but I figured, I don't know, when I always go to my family side, or when I used to, I'm not so religious now, but when I was a kid, I'd do all the holidays, and I remember in the morning we'd have bagels and cream cheese with lox. And man, that was good. But now, so that's our latest product, is savory side. So that's another thing, right? People that just miss their savory bagels, their savory breads. We didn't have that as a kid. They didn't have low carb bagels and low carb breads, and so that's our newest product, is our bagels.
I mean, think of the low carb bagel. That if there's an oxymoron in anything you've said this
I know,
entire
right?
interview, is low carb bagel.
Yeah, tell that to my uncle. That he was like, "What? That makes no sense." Especially, the other product, I would love to expand that line so that we can get those people. Right, it's an oxymoron, but
Yeah.
man, that's one thing I've always missed in our product line, is something savory.
Now your next challenge is that low carb French loaf.
I'm working on something like that. I was trying to do a challah bread, low carb challah bread, but that's really tough.
Oh man,
Um,
man, that
we-
that that would
I,
be a challenge because that lightness, that light
mhm,
fluffiness, that is like key to the challah.
yeah. So there's some, but it's a fun project. So that's the other side of baking that I enjoy, is that I look at it as a problem that I have to solve. How do I deconstruct a challah bread or whatever, something carbohydrate based, and how can I, because we didn't have that as a kid, so I wouldn't have known to start back then. But I'm like, if I can learn now, like the bagel or the bread or whatever, and then say, let's do the exact same thing, but low carb. We just got to replace X, Y, and Z with A, B, and C. And so that's another fun part that you don't get to see, right? You just see the end product, but
Right.
the challenge to me is exciting, just as exciting as letting you eat it, because for you to eat it is 2 years in the works or 1 year in the work, and now I get to reveal it to the world, and I finally cracked the code, kind of, sort of, so to speak. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
So the baking thing, which was, as you said, you were this kid, didn't really, you ate the standard sugary stuff, but like dessert wasn't like your this big thing. And it even wasn't a concern once you got into your bodybuilding and you went into
Right.
the carb because you were just like into your fitness. You didn't care about desserts, but now desserts are your life.
It is, because now that I real see, and being autistic, I didn't have empathy. So to me, I'm like, oh, you don't need desserts. Just cut out your carbs. You don't need desserts. Like, it didn't occur to me, right? So that's one of the things in autism, the social cues and the interaction, not understanding other people. And thank God for my fiance. But she's like, well, yeah, but just because you don't eat desserts doesn't mean other people miss out and they want their desserts. I'm like, okay, so it took me a while to understand, but that's one of the things that the keto really helped me with, was really to understand and empathize with people. And I feel like the days that I don't consume enough fats, I feel like I'm not as empathetic. Even with my parents, they can tell the difference.
When you began eating the low carb and you began going into the keto lifestyle, it
Hmm.
actually increased your emotional bandwidth.
Yes, it definitely, for sure. And I didn't know it until someone physically pointed out and said, "You're much more empathetic," or "You're really starting to under." I'm like, okay, because up until that, it was like, well, do I really understand people? So now that I can really lay it down, and maybe it didn't occur to me at the time when I was reducing my carbohydrates, but once I look back now, I'm like, okay, if I did consume carbs, maybe I wouldn't have understood what they were going through, because the way my brain works. But yeah, definitely, empathy is something that really got to me with the desserts. Was, again, I feel like if you don't need to have desserts, you don't. But now my world has completely changed, and I understand that there's still, I need to find that yin yang balance. That not everyone's going to be super strict and not have any dessert and only have meat all day long and cheese and fish, and that's it. I realize that there's still a gray area, and so I'm getting better at that. It's a work in progress, as always, like a lifestyle. You're always improving.
Yeah, the dessert thing definitely is. It's part of that. We derive, as most human creatures do, derive comfort from the food we eat. And having
Yes.
dessert is a form of reward, and we're certainly well trained into that. Lord knows, my mom made sure I was definitely a highly skilled, trained comfort eater. And but even if you weren't, if that hadn't happened to you, it's just part of for most the human condition that food equals to some degree comfort and reward. So
Right.
to imagine for a lot of people their life completely without it, yeah, I mean, I wish I admire people. I deeply admire people who could simply go like, I can live off boiled chicken. I
Yeah,
can't. So,
of course. And that's the hard part, understanding people and being able to empathize with them.
but you're doing good work. You're doing good work by whether it necessarily fully clicks or whatnot. You're creating for people whom for their pursuits and for their health and their lifestyle to to be on the right path, they do have to restrict these types of things.
With this new year coming up, surprises hopefully will be up in the LA area, and definitely we will keep you in the loop for that. So,
But and also, how's this shipping thing going? Because clearly, this podcast is going to be going out in 2 weeks. But the thing about podcasts are they are there, And if somebody starts finding my podcast, they'll start finding this episode, and they might be doing keto, and they might be in Nebraska doing keto and have tired of the Weight Watchers candies, or
Right.
is it the Weight Watchers or whatever, or the Atkin brand candies, and want
Sure,
something
sure.
else. And this sounds really, really appealing. They might want to know how they can get it.
Hmm.
Can they get it?
So that's what we've been working on this year is, again, because they are desserts, not like a bar that's processed where it can get tossed and turned. We finally have fairly got down the process on shipping. So once we can get packaging ready, because with the COVID, everything kind of got delayed, obviously.
Supply chain issues
Yes,
killing everybody.
even for small businesses. But so that's our goal for January this coming year is we'll be announcing shipping. But at the time being, if you're in California, San Diego has several coffee shops. You can check that out on ketodessertcompany.com. We list all the coffee shops and grocery stores that do carry us. We are going to be expanding to possibly Orange County as well as Los Angeles, and we may have a location in San Francisco is another key. That's really popular up there. So those will be things we're working on that have designated spots that will carry our products. And as far as shipping goes, if all goes well, within the first quarter, we will hopefully be shipping anywhere that will allow us to do 2 day shipping. I definitely want to help our people.
Speaking of helping people, you bodybuild, you pursue this diet. The purpose of this podcast, one, is to follow my ups and downs of my fitness journey, which right now, peaks and valleys, but also to help people who themselves have various issues. What bits of advice might you have for somebody whom is trying to get a handle back on their fitness?
See if you can find a buddy or a fiance or a girlfriend or a significant other, someone that you can do it with, right? So, because my fiance loves the way I cook my meats and vice versa, we can do that. And so it makes it that much easier when you know that you're both going to be eating the same thing. I think that really helps. Or even my one of my best friends, we both live that lifestyle. I got him onto the ketogenic lifestyle. He would have never known about it, but because we hold each other accountable, it keeps me that much further because now he wants to refer people to me. So it's that much harder for me to stop living that lifestyle. So it's accountability, but also having people that like-minded people that you're surrounded with. So that majority of the day or majority of the year, however you look at it, you're with those kind of people. It just makes it easier, I think. And then determination,
Support and
support.
support and reinforcement.
I really think that's the best way because I couldn't have done it without, for me, it was the podcast and listening to the other doctors and scientists talk about how great it is. That was my support, my autistic brain, right? But in maybe for you, it could be a friend. Maybe for someone else, it could be their significant other. So I would say support. If you can have support, like in this podcast, where you can listen to people that are going through the lifestyle. I think that's inspirational. Maybe I can do it too. Now that I've heard these two guys do it.
So, James, I really appreciate you being here with me this morning. Do you have any final thoughts, advice, or just pearls of wisdom for my listeners?
I would say, just taking the first step, listening to his podcast, listening, to what I have to say. Even just hearing the word keto in this podcast, you're going to go, okay, now you're going to be curious. You have a seed in your head, and you might want to look into it further. Now you're going to dig further. You're going, okay, this is not as bad as what I thought. So I think the first step that's what I would say. Just start somewhere, even if it's just reading or listening to podcasts while you're, going to work and just suck in the information. What you do with that information obviously is up to you, but just get something in your head so that you can go, man, I wish I knew about this when I was a kid and I could have told my parents, do you know about this ketogenic lifestyle? But obviously I didn't know that. And maybe that would have started them looking into it when I was 10 or 11. Where so I think, it's great that we had podcasts like these where we can educate people and let people know that the average person like you and me you can do it. Everyone always thinks, "Oh man, you have to have money or you have to." I'm just a Joe Schmo on the street like you and me, and it's very tangible and manageable. If I can do it, especially with my the way my brain works, I think that many people should be inspired to be able to start somewhere. Whether it's here in this podcast or wherever your journey starts.
And speaking about finding people where we might be able to find them where their journey starts, James, where can people find you when they're not finding you here?
Awesome, awesome. So we do have a website, ketodessertcompany.com. We also have social media, Facebook and Instagram, Keto Dessert Company. We are in a lot of the local coffee shops in San Diego. And then definitely on our website, we list all the different locations. You can always DM us as well, and we can tell you all the shops we're in.
And as for me, I am the fittest fat kid you know. And again, surprisingly, you're finding me in your earbuds right now, or ear canal, or whatever passes for your way of hearing. I have socials. My socials are at Fittest Fat Kid, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even a Facebook page. If you have a question, a thought, if you want to share your fitness journey with me, if you need somebody to reach out to and there's just nobody in your immediate circle, I am here for you. And I am here at hi there at fittestfatkid.com. And speaking of .coms, it's still not there. I still don't have a website, but I'm going to get one at some point soon. And that will eventually be somewhere, sometime in the future. www.fittestfatkid.com. So, no matter who you are, no matter where you're at in life, remember, hold yourself accountable, but do it with kindness and understanding. And I'll talk to you next week.